Hi there and welcome to this IB ESS revision video for topic 8.2, which is resource use in society, and today we're looking at natural capital and income, also being called natural capital. So natural capital, then you need to understand what it is and you need to understand about it being renewable or non-renewable. So natural capital is a resource which has some value to humans. And the resource can be a good, so something like a product or a service that we use. Now, natural capital can be renewable, okay, and renewable, obviously, as you're aware, it means that it can be replaced, so it can be generated or replaced in the same rate that it has been used, and that's quite important, the idea of that same rate. So if we use it up in a year, it should replace itself in a year. So an example would be sustainable timber, where we can cut trees down but plant them so they regrow on rotation. There is a non-renewable natural capital, and this is when the natural capital is not replaced or is only replaced over a very long geological lifespan. So a geological time scale would be something like over thousands or millions of years. So it's not replenished within our human lifetime. So fossil fuels are an example of that. They're a natural capital that we use, a resource that we use, but once they are gone, they will not be replaced for millions of years. So therefore they are non-renewable. So natural capital includes any natural resources such as water or oil, or water or soil even, but oil is one as well. Services from natural resources, so for example, forests provide flood protection, and therefore that's a service they give us, and processes we rely on such as photosynthesis or decomposition as an example. So there are different types of natural capital. As I said, renewable natural capital is one that is replaced at the same rate as being used, and we said sustainable timber. However, the importance is just because it is renewable doesn't necessarily mean it is sustainable. So it's only sustainable if it is used at the same rate of natural income. So what that means is that we can obviously, even if it is renewable, we could use it too quickly and therefore run out. If it's exploited sooner than we can replenish it, it becomes unsustainable. And also it can be unsustainable if the impacts of extracting it, transporting it, processing it are environmentally damaging. So for example, biofuel is seen as sustainable, but biofuel, because it's carbon neutral and you can grow the trees and replace them, but biofuel, if it involves a lot of processing, can actually become unsustainable. Now, what natural capital effectively means if it's non-renewable, then is there are finite amounts, or it's not renewed within this human lifetime. Examples of this include minerals in soil, which can get washed away and not replaced, water found in aquifers, which again would be sustainable, but we're using it up too quickly, and fossil fuels. And then we can have recyclable resources. Now, recyclable resources is a bit of a contradiction. Iron ore, so something called hematite, is a finite resource. So the actual ore, where it's found in the ground, will run out. However, the product iron can be recycled, and as a result we can make this a recyclable resource and make it a sustainable resource, because cars, for example, which are made of 90%, made of iron, can have that 90% of that iron recycled, so it becomes effectively sustainable. Now, there is an issue with natural capital that it becomes dynamic. So sometimes the value drops, sometimes the value increases. And you can see here that the value of copper, has changed over the years. So you can see how copper's gone up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, due to its demand in usage, and then more in recent times, because we've run out of rich copper ore, the price has increased again as a result, and the value of copper has increased. And this can be seen at different points around the world. So cork is an example. So what do we mean by cork? We mean the things that would bottle a bottle of wine and put in, stop the wine coming out. And that used to always be used using cork, the bark from cork trees. However, since we've started using plastic, because it's cheaper, as the lids for bottles of wine, the cork trees have not been used. And that means that the land has been used for other crops. Now you might think that what's the issue with that? Because it just means the value of that resource has gone down, we don't need it anymore. Well, actually cork forests were very sustainable because they were only harvested sort of every 9 to 10 years, and therefore the land was very biodiversity rich because it supported other animals and plants in that area. So the loss of the cork forest, because the land's been used for other uses, has now led to a decrease in biodiversity in areas like Portugal where this was originally grown. The other example is a good one, is lithium. So lithium was pretty much valueless sort of 40, 50 years ago because we didn't have much of a use for it and it just lay under the ground. However, lithium now is used in car phones, batteries for batteries for phones, batteries for electric cars, and batteries for computer tablets. And therefore there is now a huge increase in value, and we can't actually get the lithium out of the ground even at the rate that we need it. And you can see how the value of lithium in the last 10 years has absolutely spiked because of the increase in demand for it. And lithium mining isn't an easy process, and therefore we have changed our method of extraction of it. We now use electricity because it's a lot quicker, makes it more unsustainable as a result. So valuing natural capital is a very difficult thing to do. So what we can do is a use valuation, and that's when we can put a price on it exactly, and that is easiest to do when you've got economic prices of goods. So for example, if the lithium we just spoke about is being sold for a certain amount per gram, it's got a price. If it's got an ecological value, then that's really useful. So for example, water stored in a reservoir has an ecological value, and we have need for it, so we can put a price on it. And recreational values such as the coral reef in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef, that will earn so many billions of pounds for tourism, and therefore it has an easy value to place on it. However, there are some that have non-use valuations, and this is when you can't really put a price on these things. And some companies have tried to do this, but it's a difficult situation to work out exactly. So it could be that just the intrinsic value of having the right to exist of this resource or from this resource that it allows us to do is the value, and that's difficult to put an actual number value on. It could be that it's got future values that are difficult to predict, so no one would have been able to predict the increase in lithium 15, 20 years ago. And it could be existence values in the future. So basically, with this resource, we will be able to continue to exist. And that, again, is hard to put an actual value figure on. Environmental servicing, and this is sort of a hidden value that many people don't appreciate. But in 2005, the UN sponsored something called the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which had the following aims. It wanted to assess the impacts of anthropocentric ecosystem change, assess the impacts of actions on human well-being, enhance conservation based on scientific research, and enhance suitable use of ecosystems. And within this, they looked at what is the value of the environmental services provided by nature. And you can see here, this is the environmental services that trees provide effectively. So nature provides, so you see we rely on nature for our food, our water, our medicine, our raw materials, cultural aspects. Our landscape provides clean water for us. Obviously, it produces oxygen, it reduces carbon dioxide, it reduces other types of air pollution, therefore it regulates the temperature. And biodiversity obviously underpins all ecosystem services, so it's really important. And the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment established 4 categories of environmental services. So you've got provisioning, which is the products that humans obtain from ecosystems, so our food, our raw materials, our medicine, our fresh water. Regulating, so the services nature provides, such as cleaning the air, maintaining the climate, purifying water, cleaning waste and pollution naturally, controlling diseases and pests, pollination of crops to give us food, and moderating extreme events. And then there is non-material benefits such as recreation, aesthetic, religious values, educational values, etc. And then supporting values, which is the underpinning services that allow other surfaces to function. So for example, photosynthesis, nitrogen cycle, soil formation, even, I'll get there eventually. So these are all hidden values from environmental services. And the environmental services, if you think about plants, it's like a giant life support surface. So plants provide us with food, water replenishment as part of the hydrological cycle through evapotranspiration, water storage to reduce floodwater, reduction of soil erosion, sequestration of carbon, and they act as air pollution buffer zone. So being sustainable can help change the price of environmental resources. Sustainables can actually, to make something sustainable, it can make it more expensive initially, it might make it cheaper later on, but it might be a more expensive form. So instead of using crude oil, you might use plant oil, which might make it more sustainable, but it means there's less of an impact in the future. But it is important, sustainability, to maintain future markets. An example of something that needs to be sustained is the honeybee, because the honeybee is extremely valuable for our environment in terms of pollination, and is worth billions of pounds worldwide. Now, one area which is being exploited more and more is the poles. So an area where we haven't used a huge amount in the past to get resources is becoming more scrutinised. And one of the reasons for this is global climate change. So the North Pole, particularly the Arctic, is more reachable because there are more days now where there are no ice each year. And those waters then can be explored for resources. And oil and mineral resources that were previously too difficult or too expensive to extract can now start to be exploited, because they become economically viable, because we can afford to do it, because we can get to the area more closely, and also because the cost of oil and gas is going up, they can charge more for it. It makes it worthwhile. So one question with the poles is, well, where is the ownership? And this refers back to the laws of the sea. So think about the topic you've done about the sea and continental shelves, and basically it depends on the extension of continental shelves as to whether people own that bit of Arctic, because the ice is floating. So in terms of the poles as well, we need to know about the Antarctic, and the Antarctic is again starting to be looked at. Overall, it's 98% covered in ice. There are no minerals or oil to any significant level, we believe, but a lot of exploitation happens in terms of tourism, fishing, whaling, and sealing. And what has happened to protect the Arctic is the Antarctic Treaty has been signed, which is an international responsibility for the environment. So no one country owns it, it is a shared. And the Antarctic Treaty has been agreed to make sure that the Antarctic is free of nuclear tests or nuclear waste. It should only be used for peaceful processes, so it shouldn't be used as a military base, for example. It's a preserved territory, so we're not conserving it, we're trying to prevent it, and actually bringing it back, we're trying to prevent it from any damage. It's undisputed as a territory, i.e. no one owns it. And also the countries that are working together are trying to ensure it has no marine pollution, that any sites that are damaged are cleaned up, no mineral extraction occurs, and whaling is tightly regulated. But as per usual, the humans are still impacting it. Fishing has not been controlled around the Antarctic, and therefore penguin and seal populations have fallen. And because of global climate change, ice is melting at an increased rate. And I think if the Antarctic melted, the oceans would increase by 70 meters, which is a huge, huge increase. So exploitation of these areas can happen depending on the value of the natural capital.